Okay. So where we're headed today is to go a little bit deeper into the wounds work to start to understand how we can pull out what you've started to unpack and what to do with that. So part of that is we're building up this place of relatability, of trust, of connection, and then we'll combine that with your superpowers, with all of your experience to create your story and really your mission. Because out of this, likely, especially as we start to get into the wounds work, it may stir up some passion about no one should ever have to go through this. Or sometimes you just feel really connected to that you went through something and that you're passionate about that other people shouldn't have to struggle in the way that you did. And that could be from a capital T type trauma. That can be from just the little bits that add up. That can be from things that seem like they're not that big of a deal, but over time, it's like the 1,000 paper cuts that wears us down. Some of these are definitely programmed and started off in childhood. And yet there's things that we experience as adults that may not seem at all like they're related to our childhood. And we might get much greater clarity about like now I have a real big soft spot for moms and work-life balance, and that's not something that I know that I really understood, before having a child. I'm sure I was picking it up watching my mom growing up. She was running a business and we had a ranch and raising kids and was there at every single event and all of that. So it's one of those that I'm sure I was getting some of the programming as a child, but then some things don't really get uncovered or fully unfolded until we're an adult. And so that's something to just kind of be mindful of, is as we're going through that there is this way that your more recent challenges, they're probably not entirely new, but they may be unpacking a deeper layer that you can communicate about your passion that allows you to relate um, at an adult level, but where they're usually sourced and found within some of our childhood wounds. And so we're going to unpack those a little bit more. What we're also going to start looking is, well, then what do you do with this? Yes, it connects you to people. Yes, it helps build your story. And it's going to start highlighting our mission, because that's where we're headed next, is we're gathering the information on the wounds so that we can be getting really clear on who we are to our potential clients. We're getting really clear on how we can serve our people in a way that we care about. Because there's been times that I or my husband and I have been kind of given a niche that seemed to fit our part of our story. And while we were successful with it, and while we could have continued to make a lot of money with it, it wasn't like at the core of our being. And so I want to kind of adjust that before you ever really dive in, so that you don't have this massive machine that later on you feel like you have to unplug, or that all of a sudden you feel trapped by the business you've created or exhausted by what you've committed to. Because to me, that wouldn't be worth it. I really want to look at creating with you something that you're so excited about that it's hard to put it down, and you don't ever feel like you need a vacation from it. At the same time, building in all of your extra plenty of downtime, time off, vacation, and whatnot. So that's a part of this, is having your mission. We're building up towards your big why. And why do you want to get into coaching? Why do you want to help people? Why, who is it that really matters to you? And that if you could make a difference in their life, knowing that that difference is going to ripple out to so many others, like who would that be? So we're getting ready to transition not only into the why and your mission, but then that's going to be our linking point to your who, getting much, much more clear on who you serve, and then drawing upon your superpowers and your wounds to see, like, how are you going to serve them? What is it that they need, that they want, that they crave? So all of the work that we're doing, like pulling up the craved words, will come into what they want. And then what they need is usually related to the wound. So they make, it's usually this little figure eight. It's called a double bind. That what, like the beliefs that you make up about yourself as a child, like, oh, I must be unlovable if this is how I'm being treated and I'm actually getting told this. And so in order to actually fit into my family, I have to somehow take on this belief that I'm unlovable. And yet some part of me goes, no, that's not true. I'm really lovable, so I'll do everything I can to prove how lovable I am. And but no, the world has shown me, my family showed me how unlovable. So we get into this double bind to where if we truly believe that we're unlovable, like that could be crushing to the ego. And so it's like we believe it enough to survive in our family. And then we usually try to do everything we can to prove the opposite, to prove that we are lovable, that we're not lazy, that we aren't worthless. And so we might work a lot or be extra giving or whatever it is, the skills that we develop to prove that we're not that belief, that we can't be that, because to be that would be death to our soul, because we know deep down that we're not. But because we're so young, when those beliefs, like that choice has to be made of like, if you're going to survive in your family, you adopt this belief. And that's a big choice for a child. And so all the things, what we're going to also look at is, so the beliefs can feel really uncomfortable to be like, but I don't really believe that. And that's, and I don't really want to think that. And I don't think that's true, but maybe it is. Those are usually the ones where you kind of get this feel towards, we know we're onto something. You might hear someone else's and you'd be like, it just doesn't hit you. So maybe like if someone were to say you're stupid, or, you're not as pretty as your sister, you better study hard because, you're never going to get married, whatever it is, like you can totally get a whole range of it. And you might hear someone else's and it's like, you can maybe have sympathy for them, but it doesn't actually like give you the same kind of feels. Now, when you start to overlap with others, people that you hear, when you hear theirs, you're like, oh yeah, I had that too. There's sometimes even a visceral like body reaction that happens. And that's when we know when we're onto something. When I first started this, or even probably a couple passes through, I've done this work a number of times, I would get just like, oh, I could feel it in my body. And it's not exactly comfortable, but that's kind of how we know we're onto something, because that's likely the same thing your clients are feeling. And why it's so critical that they can trust you, because to confront that kind of stuff that doesn't make them like tense up and like shy away and make themselves small, in order to feel safe actually looking at all of this, not only, it's not about commiseration of like, oh yeah, we've been through the shit, but it's this way of like, oh, it's safe to talk to you. You get at least a piece of it. And so they may still be a little timid at first, but there's much more comfort in moving towards their challenges, the real challenges. Because if it's a lot of times like the losing of 5 or 10 pounds may not be the real thing. That might be what's socially acceptable to say they want to change, but oftentimes it's not what's really there. And I'm torn. I don't always like to go after just the mere surface, what they say they want, because one of my core values is depth. And so I'm like, I want to go in and get to the real stuff, the root of the problem, and address it. But they've got to know that they're safe with you first. They've got to know that there's a connection, that they can trust you. And so it's why you strategically sharing about some of your challenges and how you've overcome them, or how you're still working with them. Like with anxiety, it's not something that goes away. There's definitely ways to learn to manage it. There's ways of tons of skills, but it's not usually something that's going to go away. And with many challenges and wounds, there are going to be a certain degree that are lifelong companions. And that doesn't mean that you fail if for some reason you didn't overcome it all the way. There are pieces that may teach us for a lifetime. That's why like my coach calls some of this work your life PhD, because it's something that it doesn't just stop. You know, it's like, oh, I worked on that, it's done. You know, there's some things that will definitely clear large degrees, and the wounds that we'll address with your clients are ones that you've at least worked with to an amount where it doesn't like completely like rip you open talking about it. So if you've encountered some parts where it just started really like pulling some stuff up that doesn't quite feel comfortable sharing, that there's a way of measuring. There's a place where it's still uncomfortable and like, I don't know how I'd ever use this to market. That's okay. If it's like, whoa, I'm just remembering some stuff or some things that I have not yet addressed, and it's bringing up way more than I can handle, then that may be an opportunity to work with someone to, you know, it may not be finished, you may not get like all of it out, but just to do any processing that's needed before using that particular piece as a part of your marketing. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to completely hide, even if you're still working on something. We're all going to be working on something. We are human. We are here playing together on this planet. So I don't expect any of you to be perfect. In fact, a lot of people that get attracted to my tribe are working with some degree of perfectionism, and the play of like wanting things to be really perfect and having a standard, and then the other side of just like, I just want to like whatever works. And again, there's that going back and forth. And so that's what we'll be playing with. So I do want to do a little bit of check-in with each of you that are on live about what your experience was like kind of after class last week, as we started diving into this, as you dove deeper into the homework, if you had a chance to work with your partner, what that was like. So I'm going to open it up and we'll go around for those of you that are on live today, and we'll look at what came up for you. So I'm just going to go around and call on people based on kind of names I have on my screen. So Claudia, let's start with you. You are unmuted.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. So I haven't been able to connect with Felice, or I don't remember if that's how she pronounces her name, but and I haven't done the homework yet, but I have some time today to dive into that. And it was very revealing for me to see how my wounds have disconnected me from my body and my own knowing, and how my challenges, my health challenges right now, and even my life situations have brought me back to getting in touch with my own body's wisdom, and listening to, you know, my inner wisdom, my inner knowing. And as I hear you talk, you know, I believe that maybe my niche it's got to be more about that than what I have been working on. So this is so revealing. Mm-hmm. This incredibly revealing, and the combination of this plus listening to the Big Leap, it's pretty powerful. So thank you.
I'm so glad. The Big Leap was a huge turning point in my life when I realized how many times I would cross the threshold, and then something would bring it back down.
Yes.
Cross the threshold and bring it back down.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I loved making leaps, but I wasn't able to sustain them. So this is, I really want to be mindful with all of you that as we're making, you know, that yes, I think leaping can be wonderful, and it's usually not the leap that's actually that hard. It's sustaining it once you get there. And for me, that's why I love the yoga philosophy so much around how to stabilize, like how good can you stand it? And that's the combination that's been really important for me, is this practice of Santosha, not about being complacent, but a practice of contentment that's around stabilizing. How good can I stand it? So that I don't immediately trigger that piece. So I think the combination is powerful. And yes, I want to really, for you especially, like you've got some incredible work that you're birthing, and to really be in dialogue with the who, and you know, because we're building into that, we're building into getting really clear. And I know for me, like, even though every time I do my avatar work, which is where we'll be getting to, and I go in about business, and I go in about you know, whatever, like, because I was like, okay, I'm gonna stick with like the business track for a while, and every time I'd go in, my avatar would talk about how good they felt in their body as a result of our work together.
Mm.
And I was like, am I supposed to be like in the health track? And then like, it's no, but the unexpected benefits for my clients have to do with reconnection to their body, relieving pain, relieving the pressure and the exhaustion. But it's not about hitting it directly.
Mm.
Because even though my people may be aware that they get exhausted and anxious and even tense in their body, it's not the first thing that they'll go towards. And it's a big part of like what I want to do, but I don't know that I want to just stay in just working from only the body standpoint.
Mm.
That doesn't mean that I get to like, I work with everybody. That's not the point. So this is a different way of just keeping both a very, very focused niche or target market, and at the same time getting really clear on what's the primary way that you connect to this ideal client, and then what are the additional benefits. I don't always talk about I don't lead with the benefits to the body and like the energy. I may sprinkle it in, but it's not usually the lead. Because people, it can confuse people. Like, well, are you working with business and money, or are you working with health? Like, so I don't want to confuse people early on. I want to give them as clear a track in as possible, letting them know, hey, there's these other benefits. But it's usually that they say, by the end, they're like, oh my God, I got this other thing. And yeah, I got the things I said that I wanted. And that's great. But the benefits I received were so much more than that. So it's like, we give them what they want. But this isn't like the bait and switch. I feel like in some ways, like some of the trainings you and I have done before, it was almost like a bait and switch. Oh, they say they want this, so give them that, but really don't give them this other thing. So I don't believe in the bait and switch. I do believe in looking at what is it that they say they want? What is comfortable talking about publicly, or what are they even aware of? And being able to meet them there. So I feel like it's really about meeting them where they are. And then through that meeting, that's where you develop the trust and the relatability and the connection, where then you can really go into what's there.
Hmm.
So it is about meeting them, because if we're just like, no, come on, there's
Right.
more. You need your body. Like, you need to just, that's where we get like frustrated with our clients. Like, you just don't get it. I can help you so much. But if we kind of find that dance and we're like, okay, for whatever reason, the image that's coming in mind is like docking in space, where they're like, okay, you're having to be really very little adjustments, and then you dock in space. I don't know why that metaphor is coming in, but it is. And then that's when you're close enough, you engage. So that's where, and that's where you go from potential client. So here you're going to be in your ideal client range. And then you have like that magnetism, and it's going to pull you close, and you can make those little adjustments through your intuition and languaging until you meet. This is usually around the time of your enrollment call or your event or your speaking. And then when you're able to go a little deeper with them, after they're like, okay, this feels safe, this feels okay, then they're like, they get to lock in, and that's when they get to take a deep breath, and they're like, oh, thank you. And it's almost like they can just collapse in your arms.
Beautiful.
Whether that's literally, I mean, I have people do that, but usually it's more of a metaphorical, like you can just feel them be like, even if they don't
shift in energy.
Yeah. They're just like, I'm so glad. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, as we go through this, I just want to be mindful that we're not completely just jumping around but being very clear on who you are for your people right now. And then once we get, so I feel you popping a little bit into them. So stay anchored in you. And then where we'll head is, once we know you're anchored in you, then we'll get the clarity on the people around you and who you want to pull in most.
Okay.
But the key is keeping anchored in you, because so many of us, myself included, I can see possibility for many people. And so I can go out and I go into their world. That's one of my gifts. But I also can lose myself in that. And so that's why even early on when we were doing relationship coaching, it was around how to not lose yourself in a relationship. That's true with your business and your clients as well. So that's why we're really anchoring in, who am I? What are my superpowers? What are my wounds? What's mine and what's not mine? And when we get really anchored in that, then as we start calling in the avatar, like your avatars, you have the tethers, you have the cords, but you're really anchored in you.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Lynn Marie.
Hi. Okay. Good morning. Yeah, I'm really excited about a couple of things. I want to touch on what you were just saying. The anchoring for me is going to be really key because, like you, I can just tune into someone so completely that it's almost like I can feel what they're feeling. You know, I get to know them like really well, and there's, like you said, you kind of I can kind of lose touch with and have to just come back to myself and, you know, letting go of what I am not. And it's okay not to be this, and it's okay to be that, and letting go of sort of judgment from others, or perceived, in my mind, judgment. And I also love The Big Leap. I haven't had a chance to listen to it this week, really. I'm very thrown off. This trip came at such an inconvenient time, but I'm thinking that, you know, maybe there's a purpose for all this happening at once, because it is a lot to do with who I am regarding my family and things like that. That's a lot to do with my personal story. And how I love how nitty gritty we're getting with the wounding process, because I just kind of like to reach all the way inside that person and touch the essence of them in a compassionate and loving way. And so, yeah, really interesting. I think, like, for me, I'm still in the stage of, like, I've started to get a bunch of business ideas, but I don't think they can necessarily be applied to myself right now. But I've decided to just start writing things down, and go with it, and trust the process, let things fall naturally, because I've held myself to such a strict standard for a long time of perfectionism and things like that, that I've been feeling exhausted. And so it is just a true desire of mine to be able to be successful with the ease of and going for the things that really move me. When I resist my truth, it's exhausting. It's not worth it, like you said. So it's not about money, really. It's about, I don't know, what's meant to be, kind of, is how I'm thinking, but the true satisfaction. And so I'm sort of in a flux right now because I'm traveling and everything, but I'm just going with the flow. And I feel a little thrown off, so I need to get home and get zipped back up and grounded again, and apply myself to what we're doing now. So I'm really looking forward to, I'm going home tonight and I can't wait. But yeah, I've got some catching up to do this week.
Okay. And it's likely no coincidence that we're doing wounds work and you're spending time with family.
Yeah.
At an inconvenient time. So it's
really bringing things right to the front and center.
Yes. Not always comfortable, but can be really powerful at the same time. And there's something I see different in you today about the way you're owning how you can just see into people. There's a whole way I can see in your being that I'm like, oh, there's Lynn and the magic she's going to work with people. And that it's not, okay, I don't feel like the chaotic energy. I'm like, there she is. And like, I feel this trust developing where I'm like, oh yeah, she can hold me. And that's going to be really powerful for your potential clients. Because all the stuff you've been through, you know, when it's just like, you're like, oh, this has created my superpowers. Even if you look at like the hero's journey, which most superhero movies tend to follow, you know, they have their challenges. They didn't just become a superhero. They all have their backstory.
Yes.
Right now we're looking at the backstory. And I know they have plot twists, you know, they still have like their Achilles heel, but there's a way that we want to be really aware of, you know, where some of our tender spots still are, and where, you know, we don't generally have people trying to like actually attack us and doing so. We may feel like that, but this is a way we can start working with our wounds, and once we start seeing them as a part of our superpowers, it's really incredible. It's like, wow. And some of them can be challenging to see as gifts, and we can work with that.
It's always an adventure, though, and
I would encourage you to do some grounding even before you get home, because I hear a little bit in your language of, oh, once I get back, then I'll get grounded, then I'll get caught up, then, and while I get traveling can be disorienting, I would really encourage you to find one small action to ground. Otherwise, it'll tend to kind of accumulate, and then you get back and you're like, now I'm just trying to ground and I'm trying to like resettle, and the pattern will perpetuate itself. So it's like, what can you do to at least find some of that grounding or centering with everything that's going on? And then it's just like the last little tidying up when you get home. So I do want to be a little bit mindful about, because I've heard a little bit of the pattern in the language of like, oh, well, then everything will be okay.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to get centered and get it together and just be wherever I am.
So what do you feel like is one small thing that you might be able to do before you get home to help you really ground and center?
I definitely will have time to do some chanting. That really, I mean, it's like magic. I just drop right in. I can feel it in my whole system, mentally and physically. So that works immediately. I think I can do a little bit of journaling. And even for me, just calling friends and stuff and just saying, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm on the way. And also just putting myself, imagining myself already at home and things already tidied and everything. There's really not that much to do. It can feel like there's a lot, but it's all fine.
Got it. And did you get a chance to connect with your partner this week?
I didn't. And I think I completely missed that instruction.
Okay.
So I need to be a little more mindful of reading more carefully. Sometimes I don't know what it is lately. I'm normally a good reader, and I think I'm going to have to start reading twice. Yeah, I think I'm just so excited about everything that I'm being kind of going in different directions. And so I need to just let them work together.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm very excited to connect with my partners. So,
okay.
I'll have to figure out when the next time and how that works. Am I just going to call her, or?
You guys just connect, and then you guys can work it out if you want to do a call or however you'd like to do it. You can sort of.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to catching up with that because I think that's going to be great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Danielle.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, this work was painful, I would have to say. Just the word wounds brings up a lot of emotion for me. And but it's also been very, I would say, healing, therapeutic. And I wanted to say thank you, Becky, for telling us or providing us a suggestion for a container for this, because I think it would be really easy to just go down the rabbit hole with any one of these particular issues or emotions. I think that I'm still exploring a lot of this, and I didn't get a chance to connect with Lynn this week to talk through those, but maybe at some point we will be able to do that. I think that would be really helpful for me, because I'm still in the midst of all the emotion, and I think it's hard for me to maybe just pull out the things that are the big ideas or the themes through all of these things, because it's just still emotionally charged. So if I had someone else looking from the outside in that wasn't connected that way in an emotional way, might be easier for them to guide me in figuring out what those are. But I've also been doing a lot of work on law of attraction and quantum mechanics lately, and figuring out how to put myself in a place of emotion that is where I want to show up and who I want to be. And I think that's been really helpful. So I've kind of had both sides, a lot of painful emotions, but then also trying to bring myself back to where it is that I want to be. So it's been an interesting week.
absolutely. And thank you for your vulnerability, because this is where the magic is, and it's not always comfortable. And this really confused me for a long time with things like law of attraction, because I was like, how, if I'm supposed to, like, I want to stay in more of a positive mindset, and I want to stay in more of a place where, you know, I'm not just attracting the things that I don't want. And so if I felt like if I spoke to you and I really started diving into, and especially like, you know, it's not really affirming those wounds, but being like, oh, like saying them enough to where I'm like, oh yeah, that's the one that really doesn't feel good. Like, and I've done, I guess I think I've told you guys, I've done this work in different ways because I wanted to unpack different wounds, because I know there's different angles. And when I got to one like phrase, it was, there was different versions of it, but it was like, that I was a cold, manipulative bitch. That was incredibly uncomfortable to like hold. And part of me is like, but I'm not. And the thing is, with the wounds, it's not true. But there's some part of you, because of the wound, that gets afraid that, but what if it might be? And what if they find out that it can be really intense to hold? So there's a part where like, well, I don't want to affirm that, because I don't want to attract these people that will show that to me, or that will be that way to me. And so it can be this really interesting dance when we're trying to look at our wounds work and things like law of attraction, or just being able to like be on the right vibrational frequency in order to attract what we want. What I've noticed though is that I've known a number of people that were working solely on like vibrational frequency, law of attraction, and they weren't quite getting what they want. And what was happening was like there was this underlying current of wounding or dissatisfaction that wasn't being addressed. And so when this stuff down here wasn't being addressed, it was preventing the law of attraction type of work to really fully work. And so when we can have the container, that's why the container is really important, to dip down and be with those wounds, to start reaching into the gifts, and then the wound being a little less painful. It still may have like a little like discomfort, but it might be a little less painful. Then that releases so much energy, and that's energy that's needed to truly align with what we're wanting to attract. Otherwise, we're trying to manifest and attract from this level where we're using, like, I'm going to make up numbers, these are totally made up, like we're using like 10% of our energy in order to attract. And so we're getting 10% results. We're like, well, it's kind of working, but it's not working like the movie says it works, or it's not working like I've seen other people say it works. And what am I doing? And then it usually turns into, well, what am I doing wrong? Am I not believing? Like, it goes on and on and on. And then sometimes we just throw out the whole system and like, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. When what's usually going on is what we're holding at bay, like what we're having to hold at bay and hold, because no one else has been able to hold it for us, or there hasn't been the container for that to actually be explored. The energy it takes to hold that at bay is taking like 90% of our energy. And so, and there's usually a fear that if I let that out, what's going to happen? Like the world might go, explode. And it can feel that way, or I might explode, or I might, burn down something, or I might ruin my relationship, or destroy my career. Like, we usually get these fears of, if I let this out, what will happen? Mine used to be like, if I let all of this out and I really kind of go into it, I'm not going to be able to work or take care of myself. Like, I'll just be like this mess that can't do anything. And how am I supposed to support myself or my family, or just take care of other things? And so like there's like not feeling that sometimes we can completely dissolve ourselves. But when we're able to have a container and dip into that and let a little bit out, and dip into whatever degree feels safe, and draw a little bit out, we're accessing more and more and more energy that allows us to, so all of a sudden we're like, oh, now I have 15% I'm manifesting with. Now I have 30% that I'm manifesting with. And the more we dip into this, not only does it give us the greater connection to our clients, then we have more energy of attraction. And we have more energy where just by being you, and you wouldn't even have to talk about your wounds work. You're just like, you just get to show up and be you, and people can feel that. And because you're in more of your full energy, and you're not trying to manifest or attract with 10% of you, more of it comes with greater ease. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So you guys are doing great work. Like this part of the process is not always comfortable, and yet it's incredibly powerful. So, and it could be, I'm thinking it's perhaps perfect that everyone got to kind of sit with it yourself this week and be like, woohoo, this is bringing some stuff up. And what we may have some time to do today is do a little bit of one-on-one where I can draw some stuff out for whoever would like to kind of do a little kind of hot seat going into it as a model for how we can do the partner work. And that you have this week to go in and do the next layer with your partner. So I have a feeling it was just divinely orchestrated that whether, for whatever reason, it will be time. But I think, I deep respect for all of you, but and especially Danielle, thank you for your vulnerability, which is showing up with this is what is. And it's not unusual for it to bring up the emotion. And sometimes oftentimes because we've been holding, we have like an emotion that's guarding others and not on top of the others. I used to have anger that was covering up sadness. And yet I would rarely even get to the anger. I didn't actually feel it, but the first time I noticed like this pattern, I remember sitting like singing and chanting with friends, and I was holding my cup of tea or coffee. And all of a sudden, like I had this wave, I just wanted to throw my cup through the wall. I mean, I wanted to put a hole in the wall with my cup, and I was like, whoa, and talk about being like so disembodied and so disconnected from my emotions. And I was like, I must be really upset about something. It doesn't even feel like it's related to this situation at all, but all I could relate it to is that I wanted, and that's times where it would come up. That became my indicator, was when I wanted to like have a cup and I just wanted to like smash it. And I'm like, okay, there's something there that I'm not accessing. And then as I finally was starting to able to get to that, usually what was underneath that was the wound or the tenderness. For some people, it's the other way around. Sometimes there's a layer of sadness, and it's like that doesn't make sense because usually it's not related to the situation, and it might seem too big for what you're doing, and so. But sometimes there's a layer of sadness on top of a layer of anger, or there's a layer of anger on top of a layer of fear, and so usually to keep ourselves safe, we've created these layers, and they're just really brilliant safety mechanisms. And at the same time, they've usually outlived their use at this point. And so it's partly dismantling and reorganizing some of these structures. So that's what we're in the process of doing a bit. And it can seem like, well, how does this affect my business? And yet by doing this work now, you're in a space where you're wide open to receive your clients and you're wide open to receive the money. And I know for a lot of you, the money is not the driving primary factor, but but I don't want you being like pushing it away at the same time. It's like you can create. That's why we start with what's your vision of success. And then we can really start matching up with that. But I would just want you to all be paying attention to what emotions do you feel like you're touching on initially, and start to be curious if that's the one that's really there, or if it's kind of the bodyguard that's underneath. And oftentimes anger can be a powerful bodyguard. Sadness or kind of what looks like sadness can be a powerful bodyguard. Depression is a huge bodyguard. Anxiety is another big bodyguard that keeps us elevated. So anxiety keeps us elevated enough to not go in and touch some of that. Depression keeps us kind of softened down so that we're not overwhelmed by the emotion that's there. So there can be different flavors. And so I'd encourage you to really starting to think feel into what layers are there for each one of you. And as we start to just gently peel back the layers, and then knowing you can always put them back on if you choose, but you'll have more anchoring in who you are and more ability to connect not only to your client, but to your success as well. Thank you. Okay. Danielle, anything else for you?
No, thank you.
Great. Okay, phone number that ends 4329. You're unmuted.
Hi, this is Valerie.
Hey, Valerie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm having a bit of a sneezing attack. I'm not
Okay.
sure how that's my protection, but and I'm joining late, so I'm just kind of getting caught up with what you're talking about. So you're wanting me to give you an update,
Oh, yeah, just
Becky, of where I am?
how how things have gone since the last class as you're kind of doing some of the wounds homework. Um, any updates on what's come up for you, how it's going for you in anchoring who you are, especially around your wounds, and how that might relate to your clients.
Well, I have to tell you, I have not done the homework either. I had a big ceremony this weekend, and I have another Native American ceremony I'm moving towards this weekend, and I'm closing on my dad's property. So I really have not had any time to, and launching my own embodied feminine program, which I launched yesterday. So I looked at this late last night, and I really didn't have the energy to dive into it. I know I did a little piece of this, Becky, a couple months ago, and I couldn't find my notes because I didn't want to completely redo it. And I noticed that I feel a little bit of hesitation, resistance to doing it. And maybe it's just because I have so many other things going on and I'm trying to activate, and I'm in a really good place of activating, that I'm not wanting to look back, but I just haven't had even time to reflect on why I don't want to do it. So that's kind of where I am, you know. So I want to sit with it a little bit more, and also find the notes that I took, you know, maybe a month or two ago when I did some of this early stuff with you. So I don't know if
I would actually encourage you to just start fresh, because you're a different,
okay.
even in just 2 months, you're a different person. And I get a sense that there's something about that's a pattern that is keeping you from moving forward fully with some of your projects. And so I get you've got a lot on your plate. And what we want to do is just the smallest steps that are going to keep you not in fits and starts. So I just want to really be mindful that it doesn't kind of pile up and then you're like, oh, I have to do this big explosion of work and then kind of crash from it.
Yeah.
So I know you've got a lot on your plate. I would love to explore like where you have, you know, it could be a 15-20 minute block, a 30-minute block, and just setting it aside. This doesn't have to take a long time. And I really want to be, and I totally hear where you're calling. You've got the activation going, which is incredible. And I don't want you to lose that by any means. And I know you've got a lot on your plate, but I'm getting curious as to how this resistance that may be there may be a part of the pattern that's creating some of the fits and starts in your business and your program, really launching at a full level versus, you know, you're launching it, but it's like, how do we launch it like at the level you know it can be?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly want to look at that, and so I appreciate what you're saying. And I want to commit to doing that, and we'll have some time in the next couple of days.
I hear you saying that you want to commit. Is that a commitment?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is it that you're committing to?
I'm committing to looking at the wounds and how it's affecting my business.
Okay. And what does looking at the wounds mean to you as like a tangible outcome?
Well, I want to do your worksheet and follow your guidance. I mean, I'm here because I think you have gifts to offer. I appreciate what you're sharing. I've done some of this work, but like you said, I'm a different person, and what's showing up for me now. And so I do want to, I want to, and I'm committed to thinking about how that's showing up and affecting me in ways that don't serve me.
Yeah. Okay. Did you submit your talk title for Priestess Rising?
No, and No, I have not, and I
Wonder if
feel.
he's related. Okay.
Well, it's so I'd want to be really honest.
Mhm.
I'm really resistant to you telling me what to do.
Got it. Awesome.
Yeah.
That is in some
And
of the.
that is such a pattern too. I
Oh,
do not
beautiful.
like that. I love that. Thank you for hearing that in that way.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's so valuable to share, and because whether others in this group are feeling similarly, or it may be something that whether it's something that your clients will deal with also. Like, this is such a beautiful example, and I don't take it personally. I'm like, all right, we're getting to something now.
Yeah, I totally feel that. Thank you.
Got it. So what do you want to commit to doing?
Well, and there's another piece to that. It's like when I'm not clear, I can't execute. And so you telling me to execute, one, there's the thing I have about authority, or like I'm so into like my own sovereignty and not, and there's ways that this does not serve me.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also feeling like I need to get to it on my own and get clear that that's what I want to offer. And so I want your help in really helping me to find my yes. And I had it the moment we were speaking, and then so I feel like I need to work through some of what those issues are and what I'm wanting to offer in that space. And do I want to focus on the sexuality or something larger? And where.
And I want to highlight something because this is a pattern that is for me, and that I tend to attract in my clients. This is like the wounds work that I do. So one of my big words is around confused. So I seek clarity, and it's one of those.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be just like you. I'll be like, oh yes, this is what we're doing. It's so clear. Like we had like you created like this hot talk, a workshop you were gonna do. You were all on fire, and then it didn't get submitted.
Yeah.
And it was and so there was clarity. You had, like, it was your creation. It was incredible, and then it falls away. There may be something, and I've had that pattern a lot, and I have my coach that's like, nope. And I get it. So I totally get with you. Like, tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do. Things with that. And the wanting clarity, while it's incredibly important, and that feels like there's something else, that this is partly of what's keeping you from moving forward. And so I just, there's just something to explore here. And if it's the pushback with authority, there's something incredible to look at with how that may be relating with for you and for your clients. And one of those, it could even be like, how you're, what role you're putting me into. Because sometimes, and I used to do this with my teachers, I would put them on a pedestal, and then I would want to knock them off of it in different ways. Or like when they fell off of it, I would be devastated. And so I can definitely be firm with you and hold you to what's possible, so it quits going in fits and starts. And at the same time, and I can hold your resistance, and I can hold, if you were like, I just need to throw a temper tantrum right now, and that's okay. That's welcome. And my commitment to you is that your work, that is incredibly powerful, gets out into the world, and that you are seen, and the people that need you can really connect with you outside of just your therapy office, because you've kind of got that part figured out, but you have a clear mission, and you have a lot more people that are waiting for what you've got. So I would ask you to consider, what's the cost to them of you being in resistance?
Well, they don't get to grow from the, they don't get my medicine. They don't get what I can offer to them. And
what does that cost them? What happens when they don't get to grow and they don't get your medicine?
Well, they may stay stuck. They may not move forward in the way that they want. I totally got that yesterday when I offered this work on the lover, and oh my God, all the women were like, they were in tears. They're like, thank you for offering this. Like, I so need this in my life. And so if I'm not offering that, then, I'm really also getting the need for community and down here on the peninsula, and how women are really hungry for coming together and in ways that aren't available to them here, like it is up in Berkeley and East Bay and Marin or whatever. And so they're missing something, and they're hungry for something. They don't get that,
And you can offer that, and you have a commitment to a workshop up here that I want to make
Yes.
sure you're not sabotaging.
Yes. Yeah. And I have another one I'd like to do at the end of this month. I'd like to do a one on the lover here, like 3-hour
Okay.
one.
So
So
what are you committing to for yourself, and perhaps this program this week? That's not about me telling you what to do, although I'm going to stay on you for some of these stuff, because it's like I'm committed to it.
no, I totally appreciate that.
So what are you
Yeah.
we get to have all these lovely witnesses. What are you committing to this week?
Well, I'm committing to pushing past my resistance and looking at the wounds and working through that to see how that is contributing to my lack of clarity. I think that's the big thing. The lack of that's the thing I'm wanting to resolve, is or to be able to work with my resistance and know how that's affecting me. And I'm committed to looking at that and grappling with it.
How will you know? How will you know that you completed this? So pushing past the resistance, you're committing to looking at it. How will you know that you've done this to a satisfactory level for you?
Well, I've done the tangible would be that I would have done the worksheet. The non-tangible is that I feel like I would have gotten some insight, that I will have some aha about my process and how to use that as grist, as fertilizer for activating my work.
Would you be open to, I'll know if you submit your work, your worksheet, the summary sheet. Would you be open to sharing your insight as an accountability for the group, that when you get to that insight, you could share it in the group?
I will. Yeah, I'm committed to that.
Okay. When would you like to do that by?
I would like to do that not this next week, but the following week, because I'm leading up to this. I'm just being realistic. I have a 3-day Native American ceremony I'm doing starting on Friday. And
we just asked you for your by when, so you don't have to
Yeah.
tell us all.
Okay, cool. 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today.
So let's see. Today is the 6th. So by the 20th of June, you'll post your AHA?
Yes.
Okay. Lovely work, beautiful.
And I'm going to post that in this group.
Yes.
Okay.
Because you said the untangible was like the insights, your own ahas. And so to be able to have a space for that to be held, we'll be looking for that on the 20th. I've got a little note, so we've got it down. Do you have a note for yourself?
Yes, I'm getting my pad paper.
Awesome. Thank you, Valerie. And thank you so much for really being real with me and with all deeply, deeply.
Yeah, thank you so much for how you're holding that. That feels so good, Becky. It just helps me to be more honest and transparent with myself, so thank you. Yeah, it's beautiful. Okay.
Lenny.
All right.
I think you had a message.
Oh, am I off mute?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. Okay. So, Valerie, I loved your honesty. That was so cool. I love being told what to do. I'm so excited. Becky of my life right now because I am overwhelmed. So, and like Valerie had shared, I did the wound work a while ago, and I haven't caught up with this group. But as you know, where I am is I'm launching my very first event tomorrow at my place. So I'm in the midst, I'm eyeballs deep in details of, you know, how to accept payments and parking, I just all the logistics and stuff. So I'm really focused on that, and this has taken a back burner. But you know, with our individual work, I feel like there's a lot of symmetry going on between the two. So I don't know that I have a ton to contribute about the wound. I do know that the wound work that I have done will help my clients because it's given me a lot of experience, strength, and hope that I have to offer. And doing the work around the wounds and recognizing them and seeing them for what they are and really embracing them and identifying how it's affected me is super valuable in the context of helping other people when they're going through anything that's similar to what I experienced around all that. There's a lot of different types of wounds, but I've pulled them apart quite a bit in the past.
Awesome. And I know your event's launching tomorrow. What with respect to kind of this program and keeping you moving forward one step at a time, what's something that you feel like you can commit to this week?
I can commit to catching up on homework. So I will be in a place after my event tomorrow night. I will be on the road a little bit at a horse event, but there's going to be some downtime, and I can commit to getting caught up with whatever assignments I missed. And I was wondering, is it in the forum of on the Facebook page, all the assignments are listed there? There's no other area that I would need to find that out?
Only there. And what I can do
Perfect.
for you guys is, because I know sometimes like the downside of Facebook is that sometimes the assignments get a little buried. Would it be helpful if I kind of kept a file that I just kept updated so you can just go in and look like in the files and documents place, so you can just like a sheet and be like scan down? Would that be helpful?
For me, absolutely 100%, because it would consolidate it and put it right in my face. That'd be great.
Got it. I can do
Thanks.
that. So I always post them in the group. So it's like the day of, or like the day or two around like this call, I post them. But what I can do is I can consolidate that into an ongoing kind of document. And that way, if you don't want to dig, you can just go in and look at the document with some little check boxes or something like that.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, ladies, awesome job. And it's not unusual for when we're diving into this section, it's not unusual for life to sometimes suddenly get busy, and all of a sudden we have all these other things to do. And we went from like 100% people had their homework in like the first week, and then it kind of waned. And this is not unusual when we're dealing both with our superpowers, and then especially it becomes the case when we start digging into our wounds. So while of course I really want you to all stay up week to week on your homework, because then it doesn't pile up, and I know what that's like. I've definitely been that one of like, oh, I'll get to it, I'll get to it, I'll just kind of crank it all out. It's just, it really is like, I've got this designed so that you can do little bits at a time and then not have to do this all or nothing all at once pattern. Because what I'm really wanting to structure in your businesses is that you can do really minimal things that move your business forward massively. And what tends to happen is the opposite. Massive effort, minimal movement forward in your business. Does that make sense? Okay, so and I totally get the, like, I mean, this definitely pulls back this may pull up any wounding you have from school or having to do homework or like all of that. So that may be drumming that up. But the intention behind it is little bits of homework, minimal movement, baby steps, so that the results are massive instead of the other way around. I could give you, I don't want to just give you a ton of like massive homework and have you get minimal results. I feel like that was kind of the way the school model worked. And so I want to flip it on the head, because you are all very, very powerful, intelligent, magical women. And I want to be able to work with you so that you can do minimal effort, maximum movement. And there's a sweet spot for you in that, because I know that a lot of you are working hard on your businesses, on your life, on your other projects. And I just want to be really mindful about the exhaustion and the overwhelm and everything else, so that we don't set a pattern early on in our businesses where it just becomes this machine that we have to like do the grind all the time. And then why are we in business for ourselves anyway, when we thought it was this dream of lots of freedom and ease and adventure and peace? So I really want to be setting up some structures with these homeworks early on, because it is setting a structure for your business. And I do want to let you know some of the intentions behind some of this work as we go, not just the intention say the wounds work in general, but even of some of the deadlines. I want to get us out of our wounding, because many of us have wounding around deadlines and homework and school to some degree. And whether it's perfectionism or procrastination or authority or resistance, whatever it may be, there's usually a degree of that shows up in your business. And it shows up usually as the little kid that's like, I don't want to do it, you can't make me. And it's a little part and you're right. The little girl in us is not meant to run our businesses. She needs to go play. And so the other side of this is noticing what part is having resistance to the homework, what part is saying is busy. Like, I know we've all got full lives. And there's a flip side, because if we're going to create greater time and space, we've got to be able to work with that. So I'd be really encouraging you all to look at if there's a part that's coming up in resistance, whether it's to not feeling like you have enough time, not wanting to do it at all, whatever it may be, not going into confusion, needing like, oh, this isn't clear, I'm not clear, this homework's not clear, whatever it may be. I want you to really pay attention to what part of you is feeling that way. Oftentimes, it could be the little girl inside that it has a wounding that's getting activated, and like I said, she may have fear of not doing it right. She may have not being like, mine has to come up around, I really want it to be impressive. So it's like, I want it to be impressive. I want it to be really good. So it's a different side of the perfectionism. And then so it turns into procrastination, and then it turns into overwhelm, and then it turns into, well, I'll just do something or I'll do nothing. It's like either I'll just drop it all. So I want to be really mindful with these patterns with each one of you, and hold them very lovingly. So this is not like none of you are in trouble. This is not at all about being in trouble. Like, this is a space of being really lovingly held, so that those parts that aren't designed to run our businesses, like the little girl inside, or the teenager that does not want to do their homework, and you're not going to tell me to do my homework, and like whatever kind of like explosiveness is there, that we can be like, that part's not meant to run our business either. But what that part has something that it needs and something that it wants, and it may have a wound that's getting activated at the same time. So I really want you guys to be gently exploring this and what part is coming up. When my little girl comes in and she feels like she has to run the business, that's when the overwhelm comes up, because a little girl's not meant to run a business. And yet so many of you have had to grow up young, had to grow up early, had to learn to like really be responsible and not have that time to be a little girl. So it's like, what does that little girl need? Does she need to go ride her horse? Does she need to go draw? That's why I've really kept a rotation of art projects. I've got a little like horse coloring book. I totally went to like the little kids section and got my little horse coloring book and some watercolor paints. And I'll sit and I'll watercolor paint with like the kid, not fancy not toothbrushes. I don't even use fancy paintbrushes. I'll get my little kid's paintbrush. And so finding ways to really let that part of you do what it needs, so that the part of you that's in business can take care of business. And oftentimes these parts get they feel as if they have to do other things, because usually at some point they had to. So thank you all for really addressing what is there. Like, this is incredibly valuable work. And where we're going to head today is, like, today a little bit we're approaching your mission, but I think it might be helpful to do a little example of taking the wounds work deeper, so that we can go not only into some of the questions that I said in the example of the homework about how to ask those questions, but then we can also start looking at the skill and the strategy. So I said that you didn't have to get to that place in the columns, but we can get to that today. So I think you're all unmute. Who would like to, I'm going to unmute you all just so you can talk if you want to, but I'm going to ask for a volunteer. We may have time for more than one. In fact, depending on how it goes, we may be able to get to several of you. So who would like to go first to do a little deeper dive into some of the wounds?
I would like to.
Okay. All right, so Lynn, let me pull your video up.
I can't hear you.
I got a little overzealous. I did myself as well.
I didn't hear you for a minute.
Yep, I was getting a little overexcited with my mute button.
Okay.
So what we're gonna do, we're gonna pick one wound to dive into. There may be some parts you've already explored, and then we're gonna unpack a little bit more of the felt and the crave that you could be doing also with your partner. And then we'll also start to look at some of the skills and strategies. You don't have to remember any of this. I'm just kind of letting everyone else know the framework of where we're headed and playing with that. So what's the wound you'd like to unpack?
I think that I oftentimes feel rejected. Would that be a good example?
And do you have like a specific memory or a specific instance that you like a kind of a clear memory from childhood about being rejected?
I'm just trying to pick the right thing. I dove in because I wanted to learn how to do this. So sometimes, and this is where sometimes I start, I'm like, oh, I want to unpack this whole lazy thing, but I would have a hard time finding like the instance. So sometimes, rather than starting off on I want to deal with the rejected one, if you can think of one of like a challenge from childhood, an action, and the more we can have like an actual circumstance, usually we can draw out all of the juicy stuff that our conscious mind has kind of kept at bay. Well, let's go with this one. When I'm the youngest daughter of 3 daughters, and whenever I would talk when I was little, everyone was all busy and they'd be trying to watch TV or whatever, and I thought people were more interesting, that person-to-person dialogue was more real. So I would start to talk and I was always shushed. And so no one ever wanted to listen to anything I had to say. And this happened quite often, but I'm picturing being in the living room. I'm probably around 8 years old, and I start to say something or ask a question, and everybody's really irritated with me, and I'm not allowed to talk.
They're irritated, you're not allowed to talk.
Yeah.
Okay. How did it feel to be shushed?
I couldn't understand why they would want to watch, why it wasn't important what I had to say when they hadn't even given me a chance to express it yet. So it was very frustrating, and I felt like they weren't open. And I think this does continue into today. Sometimes I don't feel heard, or I don't want to talk over other people.
And how does it feel to not feel heard? So when you don't feel heard, what's that like?
It really feels, it's almost like a physical reaction. Sometimes it's frustrating. Sometimes I get annoyed or angry. Sometimes I actually feel like kind of choked off. I can't, I'm not allowed to talk. So it's almost connected with the breath.
And how does it feel like when you feel choked off? Like what does it feel like?
It just feels really constricting. Uncomfortably so.
When you feel constricted, like what does your body want to do when you feel choked off and constricted? What does your body want to do?
Yeah, I really tense up. There's an actual like sensation of almost like a choking feeling. And so I just want at that point to kind of turn off, I guess, or get away, or I kind of give up after a few tries if I'm really not, if I start to say something maybe 3 or 4 times and then I realize I'm not going to be heard, I get a bit frustrated and turn away.
Okay. So, and this is, we're starting to get into some strategies. So in order to, and I'm just kind of highlighting this for the group. So I'm making kind of notes in a little separate area because I'm hearing her start to actually talk of some strategies that in order for her to survive, like her psyche, for Lynn's psyche to stay intact, when that frustrated, when she's not being heard as a child, when people are shushing her, when she's feeling frustrated and annoyed and angry, you know, it sounds like it may not have been actually like you wasn't safe or wasn't allowed for you to express the anger and frustration and annoyance. So the strategy that she started to develop was to turn off, to
yes,
away.
I wasn't allowed to express any. They weren't on the list of approved.
Yep.
You know, expressions.
And so we'll go back and we'll find out what the gift is in some of these strategies. But I'm noting this other, like, while she's talking, even though we're not to strategies yet, I am going to note like turn off, get away, give up, turn away as some potential strategies because they're coming up already. And I don't want to go into those just yet, but I'm noting those as we go. So when you felt frustrated, what else was there?
So when I wasn't allowed to talk, I felt rejected, I guess.
What does rejected, you guess, mean?
Well, I just couldn't believe they didn't want to hear what I had to say. And that I felt like I was important enough to have equal speaking time. And that
there's something about not important enough to actually feel into that one for a moment. And even if you want to close your eyes. So you feel like people are interesting. And it would be much more interesting and seem valuable to talk to each other instead of just watching TV. You keep getting shushed. You don't get to talk. You don't get to ask questions. And yeah, I can see that being frustrating and annoying and angry. You feel choked, tense, constricted, and ultimately feeling like you're feeling rejected and not important enough to even pay attention to.
That's right.
Keep your eyes closed for a moment. What's it like to not feel important enough to pay attention to?
It's hurtful, but it's also really disappointing.
Disappointing. There we go. So hurtful, disappointing. Are there any other emotions that come up around not really feeling important enough for them to even listen to?
Well, I don't really remember feeling very angry about it, although maybe underneath there could have been some.
How could you imagine your 8-year-old self feeling, even if you don't remember the actual feeling?
I was just so disappointed in them that that there was no one to talk to, there was no one interesting to interact with, and that why are they deciding for me that I don't have anything to say, for one. And also just like, where do I go with that? You know, I can't change it. The more I try, the more it goes the wrong way, you know? And
I want to pause. So when you're working with your partner, phrases like that are important to note, even if you're not sure where to put them. The more I tried, the more it goes the wrong way. So we want to highlight phrases like if you kind of get a hit as the partner and you're listening, you're like, whoa, jot those down even if you don't know where to put them, because it's likely going to come up as something valuable. So Lynn, I'm going to reflect that back to you, and I want you to just kind of let me know, like, has that shown up other areas of your life? The more you try, the more it seems like it doesn't work.
Yeah, I will say that if I'm making a lot of efforts towards something that I don't want to waste my energy. you know, if I'm making a lot of effort and it's not being recognized or it's not having any value, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to put it to something that's rewarding for me and that is important to the other party.
And what beliefs, in order to survive in your family and kind of like just be able to make it through day to day, what beliefs did you have to make up about yourself? Either what were you told, or what beliefs did you have to make up to just not have so much dissonance? So
Well,
I am, or
I became very stoic. So I decided that after a few years, what I thought was none of their business. So I didn't show my feelings.
is there some like is there any part of like you can't do anything to get a rise out of me? Almost like,
Oh yeah, definitely. It was on. I would not crack. I was the most composed person you would ever meet. And so, yeah, to protect myself, I even had a name for it. I would put on my stone face. So if they were trying, you know, my sisters particularly were trying to tease me, or that was my way of not letting them in.
okay. And what are some of the beliefs that likely you didn't believe, but then as it just adds up over time, it's like a paper cut. It sucks, but it's a paper cut. It heals. But if you have 10,000 paper cuts, like that could be really intense. What is a belief maybe that they were imparting to you, or that
Definitely that I'm not a person that has something important to say. I don't know anything. I'm not worth listening to. That's come up over the years, that one.
that's the one that probably hit strongest out of the ones you said? I'm not worth listening to. What other beliefs might have been coming up around that time? Again, likely that you don't at all believe now, but it still has a little discomfort.
Yeah, well, definitely that I was kind of like they were almost like enemies for me. Like my family shouldn't be an enemy. There was a lot of competition, and a lot of like mean stuff between the kids, and so I kind of felt let's see, I guess I felt disregarded. I definitely was told I was ugly. I always teased about my weight. And they treated me like I was really stupid. And I don't believe I'm stupid now, but I'm a little shy of acknowledging that I have any kind of intellectual power.
Exactly. And that's where these start playing in, where you know you're not stupid, but then it's like there's some small part that goes, what if
Yeah. What if I am really stupid? Yeah.
So there's different flavors, but I want you to just kind of feel into like the cringe factor. I'm just gonna share a couple of words, and I want you, if it has no cringe factor, it may not be one of the ones it will pull into. But I'm gonna say it in the phrasing of like you are, and so it's said with love. But I also
Yes, I understand.
What cringe factor is there, and I'll say them kind of in pairs. Because what we're looking at is some of the patterns that are there. So testing for cringe factor. You're ugly, fat, and stupid.
Definitely has some cringe factor.
Okay. And what do you notice about it? Like when you hear that, what comes up?
I guess that, well, it plays into relationships. Like I'm not going to have friends or, you know, boyfriend or basically I'll just be sorry, I'm even getting emotional.
No, sorry. This means we're getting.
Yeah, definitely. I guess that I'll be left by myself.
Yeah. Okay. You're not really worth listening to. You know, you don't know anything, you're not even really worth listening to.
Yeah, that kind of bothers me a little bit. Probably not as much as the other one, but I think it's more I'm not worth talking to also.
Okay. So you're not worth talking to, you're not worth listening to. So I feel like there's like you could fill in the blank. What would be that uncomfortable fill in the blank?
So that just feels kind of like I'm being pushed away.
Okay.
You're not worth talking to, so just piss off.
Got it. How does that land for you?
Pretty strong.
Okay. And you can even see like there's even like the body motions. Okay. What did you crave? What did you just really want when you had like were feeling either ugly, fat, and stupid, or that you're not worth talking to, so just piss off? What are some of the things that you really just wanted or craved?
Just acceptance. For someone to be able to just stay there and not leave.
What would you get if they stayed there and they didn't leave? Like what would actually be there for you?
I think comfort.
Okay.
And just I guess yeah, more like just a feeling of being more natural than not. I'm trying to figure out the right words. So what would be there or what wouldn't be there?
I'm wondering, and I'm going to throw out some words and I want you to just feel it lands. You don't have to take any of them. I'm wondering if there's something around connection.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Feeling a connection.
Is connection your word, or is there something that would feel like more close to you?
No, I think that one works.
Okay. And when you felt frustrated and annoyed and angry at them not paying attention to you, not listening to you, not even like you're not worth talking to or listening to, what were you really craving then?
I was just craving acknowledgement, respect. I think acknowledgement covers a lot of it. It's not like I needed a lot of attention. I just wanted to feel like I was there, like someone knew that I was there, and that I count, I guess you could say. I don't know why that comes to mind, but that really lands, like that I'm noticeable, that I count for something.
Got it. And we could keep going and get more craved words also, and I would encourage to do so with a partner. And then you would also kind of, once you get through this whole process, pick another wound and then when we're all done, we'd go through and circle like, okay, oh wow, I said acceptance 3 times, like it got underlined, or so you can start seeing the patterns. I want to touch briefly on some of the strategies because we didn't get to really talk about that last week. So some of your strategies were the stone face, your most composed person that anyone knows. You could get away. You learn how to give up. You learn how to just turn off. How did those serve you? So in those times when there was a lot of pain, how did that really serve you?
I really felt like I was more introspective than extroverted, and so by putting on this protective, like non-emotional face, so that people couldn't know which things bothered me the most, so they wouldn't go after that. I really just felt protected. I felt in tune with more introspective things, more spiritual things, more philosophical things. I felt very independent when I was able.
Some of the gift. So the strategy, so oftentimes the strategy will lead you to a gift.
Yeah.
Strategies for survival, which they're not always the best things as adults. And yet it sounds like some of the gifts, you got very introspective out of this process.
Mm-hmm.
There was spiritual connection. So now we're actually getting some of the gifts that came out of it. Very in tune. What are some other gifts that you felt like came out of like the strategy of having to just be stone-faced and being able to turn it off?
There was some freedom. I remember, I don't want to get, too heavy, but I remember at about 11 years old thinking, well, I could just kill myself. I'm miserable. And so I thought, well, luckily I like to read. So I had some other ideas, and I picked up on, well, if I could be dead, then what difference does it make what I do now? I'm a ghost, so I can have permission to do whatever the hell I feel like. And I didn't take it to an extreme, but it was freeing.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you were actually able to explore even scare, like what could be taboo possibilities.
Right.
Do a mental experiment about suicide and be like, oh, well, then I'd be dead. I could be a ghost. I could do so. Like, there's actually there's a skill in that's developed.
Yes.
Are you able to run scenarios in your head pretty easy?
I think so. Yeah.
Or is there a way that you're able to see like the possibility? Like, oh, well, I may not want to take on killing myself, but if I did, here's some possibilities of how it could work out.
Right. Yeah, I like to run with concepts.
Concepts. Okay. So you may want to do a little bit more unpacking on this, because there's likely some other skills that you developed out of these strategies. So we went from strategy to gift, and then we can look at, and it's not always linear, but then we look also at skills. So interest and the skills and gifts can kind of be similar. Lots of introspection, ability to just kind of be stoic in a place and be like, oh, I could kill myself, and here's what could happen, and just be able to just kind of very plainly lay out the possibilities and be like, oh, that's kind of freeing. And I imagine then it cycles back to like, well, if it doesn't matter if I'm around anyhow, then I can just do whatever I want anyhow.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to keep looking at some of the skills that you developed in this. You know, depending on, some people in a similar situation get really good at getting really big and demanding attention. Some learn how to fly under the radar and just do whatever.
Well, I know you're reading me, because I was just going to say, one of my main strategies was to be quiet, and then I would learn and observe, and I got way ahead of the game that way, because and I've kept some of that observation. Sometimes I don't, and like something can be right in front of me and I won't see it, but most of the time I can pay attention, and then you kind of absorb what's going on and the underlying.
There's likely a gift around there about how you could actually read people. So that
Definitely.
You really have I'm imagining that you found ways to read people to learn when you could talk, or when you could get some of your needs met. So I'd encourage you to explore what skill you developed in how to read people. I'm kind of intuiting that, and I'd love to see you unpack that, because there's likely these skills that come up that they don't, that they were survival skills, and then it gets to a point where they don't serve us. Like hiding doesn't always serve us in our business, and just turning off or turning away. And we've talked about that one-on-one, when it's like the enthusiasm just kind of bottoms out.
Yeah.
But then there's this place of like, oh, where is that actually a gift, and how can I have that work for me?
Yes.
And so this is where we want to get to know some of our patterns, just because of the way they'll show up in business, but also how you can relate to your clients. Was this helpful?
Yes. Yeah.
What are you taking away from this little mini session?
Well, the method, what I'll be able to work with my partner, which I'm really looking forward to. So I wanted to be the example so I could learn from it, but also just some personal empowerment on how to turn something that may seem like an undesirable into another form of expression, and how it can help me understand the world that we live in a little bit more.
And I want to highlight to all you that as the emotion came up, I didn't run in to rescue her. I held it, but I was like, oh, it's okay, don't cry. That's not going to serve her. So it's not unusual for emotion to come up in this process. So when you're working with your partner, I encourage you to be in a space where you would feel safe if the emotion came up. Like if you just need to, like, you know, close the door in your bedroom and be like, have your conversation. If it comes up, it comes up. You know, this may not, you know, so I want you to feel that you're in a space where if it comes up, you feel safe for the emotion to come up in your environment. And then, you know, so it's about not rescuing. You can acknowledge, like, wow, imagine that kind of sucks. So you can acknowledge the feelings that are there and be like, but I don't want to go in and be like, I don't want to rescue. I don't want to commiserate, or try to save her, because there's actually a lot of, I want to access the gifts that came out of some of these challenges. And I
want to acknowledge that, because that's one of my problems in communication, is when people freak out if I get emotional. And it is a hindrance if they do that. So I'm glad you're pointing that out.
And so you probably also learn not to get emotional because people would freak out.
Yeah.
So that's likely part of the stone face thing. And so there's a way that you can stay with them. And the thing is, we're also not skipping over to the gifts. Sometimes I got really good at skipping over to the gifts and not actually feeling the pain of the wound. And so we want to allow them to actually get present to the pain of the wound and be like, okay, and what else is there? What are you noticing? Like Lynn started to get to even the body sensations. And we tested some ick factor or cringe factor, and just let her kind of be in it. And then, not until she really felt it, did we move on to the skill, the gifts, the skills. The strategy kind of sprinkled itself in early on, but we don't want to skip to the gift right away, because oftentimes that's what we've done. We've learned all this stuff about positivity and being in the right, you know, positive mindset, which is good. But if we skip over actually feeling it, it'll get stored in our body, and it'll get locked up, and it'll get continue to lock deeper and deeper, and it will come up later. It'll show up as pain. It'll show up as disease. It'll show up as exhaustion and fatigue and overwhelm and anxiety and stress and depression. And I don't think I need to keep listing. But if we feel it and let the body, you know, the body may, you know, it may cry. You're like, I'm not even sad. Why am I crying? Like, the tears are a powerful release. Your body may want to shake. If you want to move, move. But there's a way that as you go through this, it's going to come up and out of the body. And I encourage you to let it, because then it's not going to stay stuck. And then the gift is truly usable. Otherwise, we might be able to identify the gift, but then it's like you have these golden jewels in a lockbox that you can't touch. You know they're there. We want to have usable gifts. We want to be like, play with our jewels and our gold. So that's why I want to get to the emotion first. So I want to do just brief takeaways, and then we'll wrap up for today. Your main homework is going to be to go into the skills, strategies, and gifts with your partner. And I don't know that I'm going to add anything more this week. I really want everyone to kind of go into this and get clear and get caught up. So I will go from there. So let's do closing takeaways, starting with Claudia.
Oh my goodness, so much. I think that one of the things that really resonated with me that I just read when you asked about takeaways is that my little girl is definitely wounded, and she hasn't had the opportunity to, you know, to be loved up and to be reassured, or to whatever it is that she needs in order to be okay with whatever's happening in my life right now. And she's very, very wounded. She's incredibly wounded. And part of her is wanting to run my business, or I'm letting her, or she is impacting the way that I run my business. And I can see how this is going to be incredible work, not only for me, but in the way that I also show up in my business, and the way that I hold my clients in their own wounds, in their own release of the wounds. So I guess that's my biggest takeaway.
She's the one that doesn't want to deal with the money.
She's the one that just wants to play. Yeah.
So what's one thing that your little girl, what does she want to do this week to go play? How does she want to play this week?
I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to sit with that
Okay.
because there's a lot of things that she wants to do, but my highest self is saying, "Oh, nope, no time for that. You have an event coming up, and there is some work that's got to be done." And my little girl is saying, "But let's play with the work."
Mm-hmm. And I would even, I think she can play with the work, but she may also just need some play outside of the work. And if she doesn't get it this week, she may sabotage your event. So I would encourage you, it doesn't have to be an all day thing. Maybe she wants to color. Maybe she wants to do dress up. Maybe she wants to go swing. It can be actually really simple, but she may need something. And I know that play is a big part of your work as well.
Yeah.
But she may need some play that's not tied to the work, because that may be a little bit like, okay, that's nice, but I just want to play just for me.
Yeah, it's looking like it's what's coming to me right now is play in nature, which is there's such a big in such a big way to what I do, and it fulfills her in getting fulfilled and getting nourished from the colors and the scents and the sun, and
Can
just
you take her into nature this week?
Yeah.
When do you think you can take her to play in nature?
I will have to look at my week. Yeah, I'm actually going to play tonight, but I don't know if it's my little girl. I'm going to go to it's a shamanic gathering. See, that's the thing that I'm like, ooh, because what I think it's play is very profound. And that's one of the things that I do in my work is profound play.
Yes.
It's almost like play with a purpose. I want to play.
She may need play without a purpose.
Yes.
Play with a purpose is great, but I think and again, it could be 10 minutes. It doesn't, so I think there's probably like, where do I fit this in my calendar? It might be 10 minutes. It might be the nature that's in your neighborhood. So it's like she can still pull in the colors, and it could be going to the local park, like a park that's down the street. So there might be something that you can put into you're like, honey, I want to give you 10 minutes of my undevoted attention.
And you know what's coming up? It's like, go to nature, not because I'm going to get a download or because I'm going to feel nourished or because I'm going to look at all the colors and they're going to be so inspiring for me, but just go without any agenda. I think that's what.
There's something about her not having an agenda. Go.
Yeah, just go and be in the moment, present, and enjoy and let it be. So
let
that's.
us know how that goes this week.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Lynn Marie.
I think my biggest takeaways are just being able to acknowledge that I do have like some skills, that I'm a strong person, how this process works, how what can be perceived as a negative, like, oh, I'm crying, and that's acceptable and part of the whole being. The whole being is important. We don't have to put a particular face forward. We will in our business, but we're okay.
Careful with that one.
Okay.
We're no assumptions yet.
Okay.
That's old paradigm. Like, I've got to put on the business face now. There's ways we can work with that, but I want to not.
Okay. Thank you for catching me.
All of a sudden, I've got to have my stone face on for business, or my business face. It will shift. This is where the wounds will morph. And all of a sudden, I've got business face. There's a way you can work with this to both feel appropriate for the setting without continuing to limit a part of yourself.
And I think, that I think is the biggest takeaway, is the no limits, and the not having to hold myself in a certain way that's just so tiring, and just feeling more natural and letting things, this last short period of time, I've been telling myself I have all the time in the world. And it's just getting rid of all the anxiety. And I think that's my takeaway, just from, there's no need to rush. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to do this. It's all just happening. And I just want to be experiencing it.
Great. Thank you so much. Linny.
Am I off mute?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I think the biggest takeaway I've gotten ties into something that we talked about yesterday in our session, and that's about allowing your wounds to serve your clients and being vulnerable so that you can, tap into that and actually have something to contribute to someone else. And, finding out, like what you were talking to Lynn-Marie about, is like, where did your survival skills, how did they manifest? And how do you use those? And I think that most people who don't do this type of work don't realize that they actually have survival skills. They don't realize that they have a stone face, and it perpetuates. So having that experience and going through doing the work and identifying all those things really helps when you're working with someone who you can really relate to, and you see, okay, they've got their stone face on. How do I expose that in a way that they can see it for themselves? Because most of the time, if you tell someone, it's like, obviously in coaching, you allow your client to come to their own conclusions and have their own aha moments, but you can provoke it because of your own experience. So I think that's, for me, going to be really helpful in my group coaching session tomorrow night.
Absolutely. Thank you, Linny. And
Sure.
and one final close around, like, even the stone face, there's a way that you can presence it with your clients. You know what? When we're really working, I'm going to drop in and really listen to you, and I'm going to feel on so many levels. And it may look like I'm a stoic or a stone face for a moment. And that's in service to you, because I'm going to be totally with you, but not swayed by any of your emotion. And so there's a way you can actually acknowledge it and just own it and be like, and this is why it's in service to you. So there's lots of ways potentially that it works for you, and you can even communicate it. And so, ladies, I just want to say beautiful, beautiful work today. I appreciate all of your honesty and vulnerability and depth. And for those of you that are watching the recording, I can't wait to hear what's coming up for you as well. Again, this we are kind of in the tunnel. We're in the birthing canal in a lot of ways, and it can be an intense time. It can bring up a lot of resistance. It can bring up a lot of don't want to do it. It can bring up tenderness. Please reach out if you need support. Like this is a really powerful time, and this is where you get to anchor in you. And while you're in the process of anchoring in you, I'm here to also hold you to help you anchor that. So if you need anything this week, please do reach out. I'll be posting this recording a little later today, as well as just kind of the reminder about doing the partner work this week and taking it deeper with your wounds. And then I will be creating and then posting just kind of a more of a document, a Word document that you can be able to track the homework. So make sure that you're on track, since that was kind of the commitments for several of you is getting caught up. And I want to be mindful about using the language caught up, because I don't really want you to feel like you're behind, because that's likely a pattern that runs. I know that one. But just so that you can complete some assignments and complete some things, so they're not looming and adding to the stress and pressure. But thank you so much for being here. I'm just blown away by all of you every single time we connect. So I'll see you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.
Bye.